All right, so let's move on to one of my personal favorite guys, someone that I knew I was going to find a way to make Coop and Stone watch at some point. I've liked this guy since his freshman season at Belmont, and that's Will Richard. Will Richard was not invited to the combine, much to my chagrin, but he was at the G League Ignite combine or whatever you call that, G League Elite Camp, I think they call it. And his measurements were sort of interesting. Obviously he's a national champion. He was 6'3" and a quarter without shoes, so about 6'4", right? So he'd be an undersized small forward, good size, almost an undersized shooting guard, even like average to maybe slightly below average shooting guard in terms of height. Does have an 8'7" standing reach and a 6'9" and 3/4 wingspan. So those are good measurements, right? Those definitely help him out, in that aspect. But he is also a little older. He's a December 24th, 2002 birthday. So he's 22 years old. He'll turn 23 at the end of this year. His rookie season will be his age 23 season. He is from Georgia. Again, started his career at Belmont, played there for a year, and then played the final 3 years of his career at Florida. And he is someone who has had kind of a steady increase in most of his stats year over year, but has never quite had a star breakout or anything. This year in 40 games on the national championship team, in 31 and a half minutes, he scored 13.3 points, grabbed 4.6 boards, had 1.9 assists as well. All of those are career highs, even going back to Belmont, except for the rebounds in which he grabbed 6 at Belmont. He averaged 1.6 steals and 0.3 blocks per game, 1.6 turnovers per game, also a career high. Shot on 48.7, 35.9, 84.4 shooting splits. For a few more advanced stats, and I'll talk a little bit about some of his kind of more historical stats too. But just for this year, he had 8.3 box plus minus, 124.5 offensive rating, 17.4 usage, 59.2 effective field goal rate, and a 62.42 shooting. Grabbed 11% of defensive rebounds, 4.0 offense rebound rate. 9.9 assist rate is really rough, and we'll talk about some of the playmaking issues. 15.9 turnover rate, that's not great, but his assist turnover was not horrible. He did still have a positive assist turnover at 1.2. For what it's worth, he's never had a negative assist turnover. 1.1 block rate, 3.0 steal rate. He dunked 23 times, shot 74% on close twos, 47.5% on long twos, 84.4% from the free throw line. Took 10 3-point attempts for 100 possessions, shot about 35.9% on a total of 223 attempts. The year before, the jumper numbers were similar, including in terms of his attempts. Shot a similar number from the free throw line, but he did really improve his 2-point scoring with this entering his senior year, including dunking almost 8 more times. The free throw rate's never been particularly good. But the steal and block rates have kind of been weird. He had a really high, he had a 3.5 block rate, 2.5 steal rate in his freshman year at Belmont, and then was kind of in the mid, 1.5, 1.9, somewhere in there with steal and block rates. His first years at Florida, this year took a big jump up in steal rate. The block rate maybe took a little step down. We'll kind of talk about some context there. The efficiency, for the most part, has gotten better over time, though his sophomore year at Florida, where he had a much smaller usage, the efficiency was a little better. So there's kind of all these questions. But the thing that obviously stood out to me when I would watch him in passing before doing this deep dive is I thought this dude was always making winning plays. He was always doing something to keep the team in it. He was always a part of their big runs. He would grab tough rebounds. He would, make big-time defensive plays. He would hit big shots. And obviously all that is anecdotal, right? We don't tend to talk about that a ton in our evaluations. But that's kind of why I've stuck on him as a prospect over the last little bit of time, and I was really excited to do this deep dive. So let's start kind of with the thing that people say wins championships, and that's his defense. Stone, how did you feel about Will Richard as a defensive player?
I think the defense on ball I liked quite a bit. I thought against opposing guards he did a pretty good job of sticking with them. He moves well off ball. sticking around them close if they're like coming off of screens and running around screens. Um, and I don't think he's like any sort of stopper defensively, but I do think he is more of a one or two positional type defender in the NBA. Like he's really only defending guards. Um, but I think it's high enough level where you feel confident that he's not going to be uh, hunted or anything, and he will provide positive value against slower guards where I think he can dig into them and he's strong enough to give smaller guards issues trying to get around him. My big issue comes with the off ball defense, but more specifically the closeouts. This is my big issue with him. He's just a very passive closeout defender, it feels like, where he's not fully committing to closing out, but he's far enough away to where he's giving open shots. That's really my biggest issue with his defense right now is that. But I think the on ball stuff and the off ball stuff in regards to sticking with his man was pretty good. And I thought he had pretty decent hands. He's deflecting a lot of stuff. He's able to he's not really jumping passing lanes a whole lot in my opinion, but he's doing a lot of stuff where he's reactively putting his hands up against passes that are being thrown, super quick reaction, stuff like that. But overall, I mean, he's in general, I would say a good defender, but the closeout is my biggest nit to pick, I would say.
Yeah, he's pretty solidly strong. I think he plays bigger than he is. I think he handles like small, like emergency switches well. In an emergency, you can switch him onto a 4, and he's not going to just give up like the world's most open layup. He's going to lean into a guy. He's going to put his weight into him. He's a dick off the ball is the best way to put it. If you're running by him and you're his tag responsibility, he tags hard. Like maybe, a lot of this is just the SEC was tough. They played physical, at least in the first half of games. They were allowed to play physical. And he would be out there bumping guys, shoulder blocking them, like full-on elbow into a guy's chest. He was brutal. I really like that kind of thing. I think it depends on the situation. I think his motor could just tend to come and go, right, with the closeouts. Like there were games where his closeouts were hard and like timely, and then there were other games where he just like didn't really seem to give a shit. So that can be kind of a question mark. My big thing is that he's really 50-50 coming off a screen. He's either going to get clipped and he's going to he comes off of it at the wrong angle and he's completely out of a play, or he's able to just stay close enough to where he's able to play in recovery, bother the ball handler. There's enough there where you can buy him like those tools being utilized, but he's not like some lockdown off the ball guy who can just come off of, follow Jordan Hawkins off of a million pin downs or off of like 15 DHOs or whatever. He's not going to be one of these kinds of guys. I think he's just like decently usable in a couple different ways, but I wouldn't say that he's like elite defensively at any one thing, which can be a worry when your offensive usage is so small. But we'll talk about that in a bit.
Yeah, so I'm solidly higher than you guys, I think, defensively. And I want to talk, I think the sell for me here is that this is someone who could potentially fill the Dylan Brooks, Josh Hart, Royce O'Neal type role where he's a kind of undersized guy who can kind of guard up a lineup, guard down a lineup a little bit, but is, long and really tough. So I think the first thing, toughness is something that, probably gets under discussed on draft Twitter. And listen, it can be an overstated thing by coaches sometimes in terms of guys' ability to translate. The truth is everyone in the NBA probably has a certain, level of toughness, or they just won't succeed because you got to, be tough to make it through lower levels. But I do think that Real Richard is potentially that type of outlier tough that someone like a Josh Hart is, where he's willing to just kind of fight through everything. He's never really out of plays, even though he does get clipped. He's always flying around. I think he's a great contested rebounder. The rebounding stats won't back up how good of a rebounder I think he is, and there's a couple reasons for that. One, and a lot of his defensive stats and even offensive stats in some ways are contextualized by the fact that he was playing with two bigs, and not just two, bigs in the way most guys play with two bigs, like two centers basically all the time. Thomas Ha, you would say, is more of a four, and he would play with Ha a bit, but Condon, Hamlogden, and Chinyelu are all fives, and he was playing with two of those three guys for a solid chunk of his minutes, including the fact that when Ha would first go in, Will Richard would come out. Usually that's how the rotation was built. But he so his rebounding, I think, was underrated, but he was a really effective rebounder in his time at Belmont, where he played the four. And I just think he has a real knack for reading the ball off the rim. He's going to really crash to try and get those out of area rebounds, and he's willing to throw his body around as a box out guy. Being able to contribute as a rebounder, as a 2 or a 3, is an underrated skill. Especially when you add that with his transition passing, which we'll talk about a little bit on offense, but I do like that as well. I do kind of disagree with you, Stone, on the closeouts, to be honest. I don't think they're great, but I think he is really good at executing what they wanted. The truth is, because they were playing with two bigs, he got beat a little more than I would like, but some of that was on purpose, right? They were purposely sending guys to their bigs. I think he's really good at making up for things when he is beat. He is a good recovery defender in terms of will get some recovery blocks. He's a good back tap steals guy. Now he gets a little bit over aggressive with it, and his transition to the NBA is going to depend on him not getting beat as much as he did. Not to say that he got beat all the time or anything, but it happened a bit because he was really aggressive getting up there. I think that his length and even though he's not like crazy built, I think he's stronger than he looks, especially in his lower body. He has a really good job. He does a really good job anchoring and pushing. He does a really good job anchoring and pushing on his closeouts and when guarding on the ball. His upper body strength leaves a little bit to be desired, but what I really like about his defense is that he just commits to making plays. He'll two-hand dig hard to get the ball out. He will, when it's time to double, he will make sure that double is really strong and effective. He'll really fly around when it's time to. And I also just think he's really smart. So the game I want to use as an example is the UConn game. UConn runs a very complex offense with a lot of actions and a lot of reads built in. And obviously this UConn team was not as great as their heights. But early in that UConn game, they were getting a lot of stuff just kind of easy. They got easy stuff at the rim. They got easy shots for their best shooters. A lot of stuff came really easy to UConn early, and that's why they kind of got up. Richard was the one who was, at least on the floor, the guy to most consistently recognize what was happening and try to break it up. And you would see him talking, communicating, trying to push guys where they're supposed to be. Even though, again, they did not have a great overall defensive game, he was the best defender on the floor, in my opinion. Even though Condon and Chinyelu and Hamlogden and Ha were all out there. So I think that my framing here is that I think Richard is someone who is really likely to contribute to good NBA defense for a number of reasons. One of the most important is his rebounding. I think his rebounding is going to be really effective at the NBA level. I think he can comfortably guard kind of 1 through 3. I think when you're talking about the bigger strength creating 4s and obviously 5s, I think he's going to struggle, which is a contrast to someone like a Dylan Brooks, right, who's can just guard everybody. But I do think that he's really good in terms of his ability to recover over on-ball screens. So I think he can be really good kind of getting over, which you have to on a lot of guards and point guards in the NBA, even shooting guards, getting over, staying on a hip, and then getting back in front or reading the dive towards the big. And he's athletic enough to make plays. I think he can be he can do a lot of things off the ball. The truth is, Florida ran a defense that was kind of morphing and changing. Lots of times they would switch everything. Sometimes they would hedge stuff. There were times that they wanted to over and drop. There were times that they wanted to, even kind of mix in over under stuff on off ball screens. And he was the guy who was most consistently effective at executing it. Elijah Martin was pretty good. Ha was pretty good. Ha was maybe a little bit better, honestly. But, all that to me, I just think Richard played in a great defensive context, but I think he was an underrated part of that. And again, I think the truth is he made hustle plays late in games, and he was always on the floor when Florida needed, big plays to happen and in big moments. Like Richard was always the guy they kind of turned to, like, hey, we need some energy. We need a big moment here. We need you to make, some type of defensive play. It can be a little corny, but to me, that stuff matters. So I really like Richard defensively. I don't think he's like an all defense guy, but he is a playoff defender to me, someone who can contribute on the floor in the playoffs defensively. And that's something that does matter. Even if I don't think he's a switch everything type guy, I don't think he's like an elite, off ball rover playmaker. But I think his reaction time is good. I think his anticipation's good. I think he's tough and he's strong, and he contributes to getting extra possessions with steals and with rebounds. Those are important things in my opinion. The offense is definitely a bit more of a question for me. Coop, you mentioned it a little bit, but walk us through your questions and issues with the offense.
I'll start with the good. I like to start positive and then get a little more negative. You talked about big playmaker. This is a guy, I think he's kind of the consummate connector at the next level, can drive, can make quick reads, can do a little bit of like tertiary, quaternary creation stuff. Was like the third best creator on a good team. That won the championship. I do worry that he doesn't create a ton of stuff from a standstill. It is all from movement. It is all from effort. He is out there just making shit happen. He wasn't a particularly good shooter, but I would say that has a lot to do with the difficulty of attempts. He was taking deeper ones. He was taking some off the dribble, and he hit hard shots. And at the end of the day, I don't think that the raw numbers tell that same story, but he's been, he's an 82.5% free throw shooter for his career on a, pretty small sample still. Only at 350 career free throws is pretty crazy. I do just wish that he sought contact a little bit more. If you're going to be that guy, you could create it seems like every single time, instead of creating contact, he's always looking to make the kick out or make the quick dish. And I wish that there was a little bit more aggression there. But if a shot was the right play, then there was no hesitation, right? He was still making a decision quickly, which I think almost entirely makes up for the fact that I don't always agree with his decision making, because it's an aggressive, quick decision. I wish that he grabbed more rebounds. He is undersized, so I don't think that it's like the biggest knock on him, because he grabbed the offensive rebounds that mattered. And when he did crash the glass, it was almost always to actually grab an offensive rebound. He wouldn't just get out of position for no reason. I think he knew his role and he played his role at Florida very well. I just wish that it was a bigger role. If you're going to be a guy who I want to see scale back into this exact role at the NBA, you got to have a higher usage than 17. I think he's like a good finisher because he gets a ton of assisted stuff, and there's a ton of assisted looks that he makes at a good rate, but you have to do more, right? If I'm going to really buy you scaling back into, this role in the NBA, it's so hard to make this jump from a low usage place and do this same exact role at the next level. It is one of the hardest things to do. Like his usage at 17.4 is almost Carter Bryant-esque. And I think that he's a clearly better offensive player than Carter Bryant. I think that he can get further downhill and can actually read a defense in a very real way. But you have to do more. And I do really worry that translation is just too much. So, Bryce, I must ask you what you think about the offensive issues here.
That one took all day, huh? My biggest issue with the offense is going to probably surprise you guys, but it's the shooting. It's the question about the shooting. Not because it's the worst part of his offense or anything, but because I think that this is a guy that has to hit at least some type of solid shooting threshold. And the truth is, NBA shooting is weirder than you realize. Josh Hart had 2 seasons before the draft where he shot over 40% from deep on good volume. Dylan Brooks shot over 40% his pre-draft year. I think people don't always realize how high the threshold is to be a good shooter. Now, for what it's worth, this season, 62nd percentile on catch and shoot attempts, 53% effective field goal rate there, 31st percentile guarded, 72nd percentile unguarded. So unguarded shots, he was good. He was in the 92nd percentile on 79 off the dribble jump shots, 55.7% effective field goal rate. This is far and away the best he's shot on pull-up shots his whole career, and about average to his catch and shoot shooting, from the year before. I did a little query. The list of seniors in the NBA who were 6'5" or smaller that shot below 36% from three, and weren't point guards, and for that I used sub 15 assist rate. Norm Powell, Rodney Magruder, Javonte Green, and Matisse Thybulle were the only guys that had any kind of successful NBA career. That's obviously a worrying list, and I won't lie to you guys about that. My hope for the shot is that I think there's a pretty easy fix with the fact that he's really cheating for power with his knee valgus, and his landing is off. If he can get his feet more squared consistently, I think that would help him out. I like that it's the release is high and then he drives his elbow up, but it is sort of weird because his elbow kind of flexes in as the ball's moving up. It's not a natural path where he starts below the ball. He kind of catches out wide like this and then twists into it as he goes up. So I don't think the shot is great right now. I think you can make some open ones here and there, but the truth is it's way harder to shoot in the NBA than people realize. And lots of times, I will admit this as someone who likes to talk about shooting, who likes to break down guys' jump shots. There is a little bit of a crapshoot to what makes an NBA shooter. There's a lot of guys who are good to, solid to good NBA shooters that were not great shooters at lower levels. And then there's guys that were great shooters or at least passable shooters at lower levels that for some reason feels like can't make shots in the NBA. There's always going to be this weird give and take. That's how the NBA shooting is. But for what it's like, for what it's worth, what I like, I think he's a really good assisted finisher, which sounds obvious, but I think it's important. He dunked 25 times this year in bad spacing. There was really only like Elijah Martin could make some shots. I actually don't know what he shot from three for sure, but he was not guarded like a shooter all the time. And Condon and Chinyelu and Ha and Hamilton were rarely guarded at all. And Richard still dunked, 25 times, 9 times in the half court. Shot 66.1% at the rim in the half court as well. 69.5% overall. He's in the 90th percentile at rim as a finisher. And a lot of that's transition, right? They played fast. He would get out and run. He has a really good feel for finding spots. But I also just think he's a great cutter. He's one of the best cutters in this class. Having to be a good cutter in tight spacing is hard. People don't understand that it is hard to find those angles and gaps. There would be times that, Condon would be posting up on one block and Chinyelu is standing in the other dunker spot, and somehow Richard finds the angle for a cut for a layup or a cut for a foul or a cut for a dunk. He could get up off one or two, which I really like. I think there's some real athletic versatility. I think it can be unlocked a little bit in the NBA. While he was not a particularly good driver, like I said, a lot of these are assisted. He can take, kind of one dribble. He has a solid first step, and he takes really good paths as a driver when he does drive. His biggest issue is he doesn't really have a ton of mid-range counters. He doesn't really have a great contact finishing game. But he was playing in bad spacing, and I do think that's worth noting. And you hope that the passing can develop a little bit to make him more effective as a driver. I also just think he's a really good transition player. I think he's at his best as a shooter in transition. He is really good at finding gaps and angles, and he's a really ambitious hit-ahead passer. Everyone on Florida is pretty much, but him and Walter Clayton Jr. the most, where they're just trying to find guys. They're trying to find entry passes. Richard was not much of a half-court playmaker. He was very much a role player in the half-court. But in the full court, he was a great grab-and-go guy. There were multiple times where he would grab the ball off the rim, turn, take one dribble, and see that his big, not even had a full runway, but was sealing early and would find that pass, three-quarter court to someone with a guy on their back. And he would still kind of find that angle and that touch. And he was just, Coop, 99% of the time I agree with you that I like guys that have high usage and did a lot of things, and I like that to scale down in the NBA. I agree with you. But I just can't shake the idea. Will Richard was happy to be a fifth guy. He was like, if I'm going to touch the ball the least and I don't shoot at all, I'm still going to play the same way. I'm still going to give you the same amount of effort. I'm still going to give you the same number of rebounds. I'm still going to make the right play, trying to move the ball offensively. I can't quit that. How high that bet is, we'll talk about. But I think he is the type of guy offensively who makes shots. He is a fairly valuable third or fourth guy offensively, where, hey, listen, he makes shots. He's going to move the ball. He's going to get an offensive rebound here and there. He'll set good screens. He'll execute what you need to execute. And the truth is, Florida did not run a ton of sets. They ran a lot of kind of actions, which is different. And we're going to talk about Chaz Lanier as like a hard differentiator there. I like that he was able to just kind of exist in this free-flowing offense and make decisions, even if he turned the ball over a little more than I would have liked. And all that points, again, he's not great, but there's something about him here that I can't quit, and I want to enjoy. Stone, if you want to walk us through your feelings on the offense, go ahead. And then if whenever you're ready, feel free to transition us to kind of where you would draft Richard.
Yeah, I mean, I think his skill set is really tailor-made to be like sort of an off-guard or secondary ball handler. I think he's really good at changing directions with the ball in his hands. And because of that, he can create space, not as like a creation guy necessarily, because he can't necessarily get all the way to the rim from the top of the key with like an elite bag or anything, but he changes his direction well enough to catch a guy who's bad at shifting his weight and momentum from one side to the other well enough to be able to hit cutters and stun the defender a bit to get to the corner, whatever the case may be. I think that the off-ball stuff concerns me a little bit. He sort of has possessions, it seems like, that he just takes off as an off-ball guy, where he just sort of ball watching and waiting for other actions to take place, and he just isn't doing much. But then there's times when he is, really moving the whole time throughout, cutting really well, setting off-ball screens with the size and strength that he has as a guard. But it was just an inconsistent aspect of his game that I thought was worth pointing out. I think he's a really good passer out of doubles. There are some times where they would try and blitz him or at the top of the key, and he reacted really well in a way that I thought is indicative of someone that has plus passing as an off-ball guy in that kind of role. So that's where I think a lot of optimism comes for him offensively, is just being a off-ball guy who is opportunistic with what he is given, can make the right opportunistic plays as a scorer and as a passer. I think the finishing, he is strong as a finisher. I don't think I think he can make things. There's room for him to make things easier for himself as a finisher than what he made them at the collegiate level. I think there are times where he's trying to do more around the rim than he needs to, where he's just strong enough where he can just try and get the foul and just attack. I think the shooting doesn't concern me to the degree you have. It sounds like he has really high release, and I think the touch is not elite or anything, but I think it is good. Especially he hit some like floaters and stuff in the mid range, and uh, there's stuff there for me to think that he's worth betting on being a serviceable shooter in a way that he's not super versatile. He can run around screens and stuff, but there's not like much movement equity or anything there with the shooting. Um, but I think he just projects to do a lot of things well. Uh, and for me, like if you're doing a lot of things just good, you're not great at a lot of things. Um, but I think he is good at a lot of things. So he's firmly draftable for me. Like this is someone I would draft for sure in every class. And for me, that could be sort of anywhere from the late first into the mid second. I'm still have a lot of names left to watch, so I'm not really even going to put a number on things anymore because there's so much left to fill. But I would say, in that range of late first to mid second is where I would feel comfortable taking Will Richard.
Yeah. I as much as I worry about the stuff, I can't quit the toughness, man. I can't quit just the guy who gives a shit and gets out there, does the dirty work, makes the right plays. You need guys like this on championship winning teams. You need Dylan Brookses, even if they piss you off. You need Josh Hart's. A Dylan Brooks who can actually make connective passes is like an insanely valuable NBA player, and not a 1-to-1 comp or anything, but just this is a guy who cares. I think he's the perfect kind of swing, late first, early second. A guy, if you buy your shooting development, any of that kind of stuff, if you can bring this guy off the bench in the playoffs and he can come in and be a spark plug, bring real energy in a meaningful way that's not just like being annoying at the point of attack, like he cares. I was talking about like he's going to shove guys, he's going to fight every possession. Every single possession is like the last play of his life that he needs to stay alive. He needs that rebound. He needs that assist. He needs that finish. I can't quit this kind of guy. I have him at the top of my second rounders, above Cedric Coward and Noah Penda, kind of tucked just under like a Kaman Malawach and Ace Bailey.
Yeah, so I have him. He'll end up as a first round guy. I don't think I'd be like super happy to take him in the first round. He's kind of like around like the Drake Powell, Noah Penda, Thomas Sorber area for me. I haven't decided exactly what that number is going to be. I move that tier around all the time. Like, do I really like Thomas Sorber better than Asa Newell? I don't know. It's all kind of a toss up. I'd be really happy with him in the second round. He will not make I mentioned this, but I kind of am doing a tier where it's like my first round guys, I want that to be like, these are the 20 guys. Like every draft is like 20 guys. That's not to say it'll be a 20-person tier, but that's like that's the shot that I'm taking, I guess, is those the top guys that I'm really confident he's in that next group where he's more like I'd give him a full contract. I don't think he's super likely to be like a super impactful NBA player, but there's a real world that this is a guy who's on a championship team. And the last thing I'll note here is these championship teams that are as good as Florida was tend to have more guys than you realize. I think I like Walter Clayton a lot. We'll talk about him when we get there. I like Thomas Haw a lot, but Condon I didn't like. Chinny Liu is kind of whatever. We'll talk about Elijah Martin, but like historically, the top teams have more guys than you realize. NBA talent is a separator for championship teams consistently. And, with the exception of maybe that like super dominant Baylor team, which you could say Davion Mitchell's kind of only been okay, and Jared Butler obviously had some. I think has had some other issues that have kept him from being as good as we all thought he could be. If you look historically, these high level championship teams have more NBA talent than you probably realize. And someone was taking a usage, drain in order to be a part of that. And so Will Richard is my bet for that this year. I just like the guy too much. But anyways, let's move on to the one, the only Chaz Lanier. Chaz sounds like a fake name. To be honest, it sounds like. To be honest, it sounds like a porno name. I can't lie. He kind of looks like he should have my mustache. But anyways, that's a really dumb joke. But anyways, Chaz Lanier, another old ass guy. December 19th, 2001 birthday. For what it's worth, that's a whole year older than Will Richard. He did play one more year in college, but that's a whole year older than Will Richard. So his rookie season will be his age 24 season. Still a year younger than Chris Duarte's rookie season was, for what it's worth. But this season at Tennessee, in 38 games, he averaged 31 points per game. Or not 31 points, 31 minutes per game, 18 points, 3.9 rebounds, 1.1 assists, 0.9 steals, 0.1 blocks, 1.1 turnover rate on 43, 1.1 turnovers, 43 on 43.1, 39.5, 75.8 shooting splits. He had a 7.5 BPM, 115.5 offensive rating, 24.9 usage rate, 54% effective field goal rate, 56% true shooting, 2.0 offensive rebound rate, 12.1 defensive rebound rate, 7.8 assist rate to an 8.8 turnover rate, 1.0 assist to turnover, 0.5 blocks, 1.8 steals, 17.6 free throw rate. He dunked 8 times, but missed 3 dunks. For what it's worth, the year before at North Florida, he did dunk 24 times. He shot only 72 close twos, shot 63.9% on those. Shot 181 long twos, where he shot 40.9%. 99 free throws total for 75.8%. Then did take 16.2 3-point attempts for 100 to shoot 39.5% on a 311 total. The year before at North Florida, he took a shit ton as well. I'm going to let you guys give the positive take here because I'm really, really low on Chaz Lanier. But first, I should give his measurements. He measured similarly at 6'3" and a quarter without shoes, so very similar to Will Richard. Had a 6'9" wingspan, so about the same wingspan as well. 8'5" and a half standing reach. So he's 2 guard sized. He's a little bit more built in his upper body than Richard, but a little less long, a little lower standing reach, and considerably less impactful in terms of his defensive playmaking. Coop, I'll throw this to you. I think you might be the highest on Lanier. You or Stoner, I don't know. What did you like about his offense? The offense is definitely the place to start with him. What did you like about the offense?
This is a guy who just he's a chucker. That's about it. This is for the YouTube viewers, they see it, but this is these two guys. It's the definition of hooper versus basketball player. I think Lanier is the ultimate off-ball hooper, and even on the ball when he does get those reps, he is just ridiculous. He doesn't read the floor. He's not out there making reads. He's out there coming off of pin downs, running the world's lightest pick and roll where there's never going to be a pass to the big man and just getting to his jumper. And he is fully relying on the jumper falling or the jumper missing. And that is basically the difference between a good game and a bad game. Only 72 attempts at the rim this year. Insane for a guy who played 30 minutes per game on a Tennessee team where he was their best, not their best, but like their most gone-to offensive player. It was him and Zakai. Zakai was getting downhill over and over again. Chaz Lanier, though being bigger and stronger, was not. He was fully content to settle for jumpers, and there was a huge variance to just like he's almost like the college Jalen Green, where there's this huge correlation to how well he scores and how well Tennessee does in a game. If you can shut off Chaz Lanier, they're probably going to lose. If you can guard him effectively and put a bigger guy, and because what Tennessee's plays are. Tennessee's playbook was simple. They're going to run these pin downs. They're going to get him into a DHO action or coming into off of a pick and roll. And he's going to get to that short mid-range in the middle of the floor that he likes to get to. And if you can have guys in help there who know his exact angles and what he's going for and that he's not going to read or pass out, you could stymie him really quickly. I do think he was a solid off-ball player. I think he could come off pin downs really hard. Would come off short ones. He'd come off of ones from three. And I think he could hit them at a pretty good rate. And he was good at using screens. But other than that, there's functionally no micro skills to his game. There is nothing but that shot, in my opinion, for Chaz Lanier. And the shot and the size is maybe enough to be a guy, because that is one of the more valuable skills. And, shooting is just, some teams need guys who can just get shots up off the bench, and maybe Chaz Lanier can be that guy. I'm not fully sold. I mean, my Houston Cougars annihilated him. I mean, obviously they are the best defensive team in the country. They were incredible this season, but he gave buckets to A&M for 5 minutes. The first 35 minutes of that game, when A&M was locked in and playing tight on him, he couldn't do shit. And A&M is much smaller with a much worse defensive infrastructure this last season. And I just don't think that he's the kind of guy who's going to be able to consistently do this stuff at the next level, because he's not like Duncan Robinson size, or he's not Duncan Robinson quick. I think he's just got good touch and a good mentality. Maybe that's valuable. If he could read the floor, I think if he the first guy who comes to mind for me is Kyler Edwards, who I think if he wasn't 6'1", if he was Chaz Lanier size, I think he'd be more of a guy. But if you can just read the floor and make secondary reads, or if he can make Will Richard passes, like connectory passes, he'd be so much more valuable. But it's really, really hard to add value as a guy who's a one-trick pony, who is not good at doing that one trick against NBA teams. So I've actually kind of talked myself lower on Lanier here. Stone, if you want to try and talk me back up, you got the chance.
I mean, I don't think I'm going to be honest. I for what it's worth, I didn't come in super high on Lanier. I'm not super high on him. I just think I'm probably higher than Bryce. Maybe we'll see. But yeah, I mean, there's not a ton to expand off of what Cooper just said. I guess what I could get into is why he only is basically a shooter, because I think as a passer, he's extremely premeditated. If what he wants to happen does not happen, he has to kill his dribble, stop the ball, and reassess what he wants to do and wait for a cutter or figure out, re-examine the entire floor and see what he wants to do now that what he originally thought might happen did not come to fruition. I think that, he can't create downhill. He can't create any separation without a screen. He needs a screen to essentially do anything that's inside the arc. And you guys both said 72 rim attempts. To put that in perspective, he had 464 jumpers. So he just is putting those jumpers up nonstop. He does not get to the rim with the ball. The only times that he was really getting those shot attempts at the rim was because there was screens set for him coming off the ball, and he's not necessarily cutting on his own. He's cutting because it's like a schemed play where he's getting to the rim because they're setting off ball screens for him to do so. It's not like he's taking advantage of defenders not looking or anything like that, or using his speed. He 100 times out of 100 times would rather stop in the mid-range and take a pull-up jumper, as those stats sort of alluded to, rather than go all the way to the rim. And it's not even that he For me, the bigger thing is it's not like he gets to the rim and just doesn't make them. He doesn't even try. Like he has no desire whatsoever to even go all the way to the rim when he has the ball in his hands. And I'm not necessarily sure he can anyway, but he just doesn't have that desire to really even attempt that. So he's always stopping in the mid range for a contested jumper. He doesn't have really a bag. The handle's good enough to be a straight lane driver if screens are set, but he's not taking anybody off the dribble ever. As a shooter, he has really deep range, and it makes sense when you look, if you're watching on YouTube, the build that he has in the upper body. He sets himself extremely quickly as a shooter. As a catch and shoot guy, he can. I would say probably like one of the fastest guys in this class that we've talked about in terms of how quickly he gets set. I do think there's some movement equity here as a shooter, and that's sort of, if you're going to be a specialist, be a versatile one, in as much as that you can be as a specialist. And I think that Lanier has some versatility within the shots that he's putting up as a shooter, but that really boils down to what he is. And I mean, I don't think we're going to have a ton to say on the defense, but at least offensively, he is a specialist. He's a shooter, and not an elite one, I would say, with all the hoped for micro skills that you would want in a guy like that. Like, I don't think the footwork is elite necessarily with him. I don't think he is doing, even as specialists, like there are some shooting specialists that will at least cut, that will set off ball screens, do a little bit more, even if it's not with the ball in their hands. And Lanier doesn't necessarily provide any of that. So he is really just a bet to be, a shooting specialist that can do more than spot ups, but hopefully can do spot ups really well. But in essence, I think that's pretty much sums up Chaz Lanier.
Okay, yeah. So I just don't like Lanier at all, to be honest. I don't think he's an NBA player. I don't have anything to really add about it. I'm sure he's a great. I shouldn't even call him a young man. He's older than me, but I'm sure he's a great guy. Listen, he helped a college team win a lot. He didn't make any reads this year. He was a gadget player, and he scored a lot. And I think the shot is real. Like, I think he'll be a very good overseas player, maybe even like a EuroLeague level player. I don't know for sure if I'd say he's like a Spanish league type guy. Like, I don't know, but like he can really shoot, right? Like he can shoot off movement. He can shoot off the dribble really comfortably. He can shoot off all different kinds of footwork. But I don't think it's like I don't think the touch is great. The release is kind of low. And he doesn't make reads. Like they would drop a play and he would run the play. And then he would be done, and he would stand off the ball. And it's the same defensively. His stock rate's almost disqualifyingly low because he just stands there and he could do a basic tag on a hedge, but he wouldn't do anything else. He doesn't make reads. He doesn't make Listen, he's fairly tough. He's strong. I like the body, but he doesn't use it as a finisher, right? Like it's not like he's a strength-based creation bet or anything. He's a shooter who's built like Buddy Hield, which is great. And that's like, it'd be nice to look and see like, oh man, like could he be Buddy Hield? But the answer is no. Buddy Hield had the ball all the time in Oklahoma and had to make reads. He doesn't make reads. If you watch him compared to Dalton Connect, they ran all the same stuff they ran for Dalton Connect. And I didn't like Connect particularly, but Connect would make some passes out of it. Or Connect would every once in a while shot fake, take a dribble, and then go dunk on someone. Lanier doesn't have that. He's not that athletic. I mean, he's a good athlete. Like he dunked 23 times at North Florida, but he's not like a crazy, vertical athlete or anything. He doesn't really have much comfortability with the ball, and he doesn't make reads. They would run that floppy stuff for him, and two guys would go with him every time, and he would almost never throw the dump down to the wide open big at the rim. And it's like that is like the most basic read there is. I'm sorry, like. For an off-ball player, you're running even if we're not saying it's floppy, you're running a wide pin down. Two guys guard you as you catch the ball. Don't shoot the ball. Like that's. I'm sorry. Like unless the clock is ticking down, that's not your job. Like, but he just doesn't do it. And listen, like I said, I don't want to spend too much time on this. I don't wish any ill will on Chaz Lanier or anything, but he's just not really an NBA player. I'd probably give him a summer league contract, not for him necessarily, but more so to give, because I want shooters on my summer league team to give space to the guys I really do care about. And I think he can do that. And again, there's a world that this is a really good European player. Like I think he has a really classical build for a lot of these guys that go to Europe and really excel. Because in Europe, the truth is you have to take a lot of really hard, bad shots sometimes. Like that's just, if you watch European basketball, there's one guy who has to take a shit ton of jump shots, like off crazy movement, off step. And like there's some legitimately great shooting in there. There's this one play that really stands out where it was late in the clock. He comes off a pin down, he catches it. He push dribbles right to left, and without like changing his body at all, angling like kind of towards the sideline, he just gets into it with the ball on this shoulder, the rim facing that way, and just shoots it like without, and he made it. And I was like, that's great. Like that stuff is great, but he's not quite as like fluid enough, and he's not as conditioned as like Connect. Like Connect was like taking these shots, real movement shots, sprinting around, coming off these screens hard, twisting into shots. Like that's not Lanier either. Like I think that shows up in the fact that he shot a worse percentage than Connect on a lot of these. Like I think this is a pretty fake prospect. Like he's an okay one-on-one defender at times, but I don't think he has much versatility. Again, despite the upper body strength, I don't think the lower body is particularly strong. Like he's kind of the opposite of Will Richard. I don't think he anchors well. I don't think he has particularly impressive hips. And again, it's hard for me to buy a senior with a 0.5 block rate and a 1.8 steal rate to be anything defensively. And when you add the 7.8 assist rate onto that, and that matches the film I watched, I'm out. I wouldn't draft him. I wouldn't give him a two-way. And again, if I invited him to Summer League, it would be not really for him. So.
I wouldn't draft him. I was talking about him kind of as like the second round is kind of a shit show. Might as well take the swing before the before the episode. I mean, really, he's got a decent enough build for this kind of guy, but yeah, there's just no micro skills there. And I don't think that he's a good shooter. I don't think that he's like outlier enough to the point where you can take that bet on he stays on the floor because the rest of the stuff will just kind of like maybe show up. And, if you actually develop him properly and he's not in the world's worst coached offense ever at Tennessee, that maybe there's something. I don't know. He's fine. I I don't think he's like I don't think there's a world where he is like Neesmith, where I didn't like Neesmith coming in because I didn't think he had a lot of the surrounding shooting stuff. I thought he's kind of like an outlier-y, just like half a season shooting guy. But Neesmith was like tall enough and big enough and tough enough for the rest of the stuff to really develop. And the shooting was good enough for the rest of the stuff to develop. Lanier's too old. He's too not good at the other stuff. And the defense is like actively pretty useless. He's also like one of the worst rebounders on the wing I've seen in a while. Just negative feel for boxing out and relies entirely on his talent to rebound. And it was fine. It worked because Milicic is such a good box out guy that he could just snag a bunch of rebounds sometimes. He is a god-awful rebounder. So, Stone, close us out here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to be a ton higher than you guys. I am higher than Bryce. Like, for me, I'm waffling between my two tiers of, very fringe draftable, like in the late 50s, like priority two-way guys, or a guy I would consider maybe giving a two-way. He's sort of in between that for me right now. After more thought, I'll figure it out. But I like him more. I think he has, and when you're good, you're a better bet to shoot than a lot of these guys in this sort of range. I think it's just easier to be high on this sort of player, versus for me, like a Janai Broom, where it's more of just an off the bench big that can, maybe give you a couple shots at the rim and not do much else. Like I just tend to favor shooting more than a lot of the skills in this sort of range. So I'm waffling between those two tiers right now. But yeah, in terms of the defense too, like the issue for me is just he's too slow. Like he's for as athletic as he looks, he's just really slow. Can't keep up with a lot of the guards because that's what he'll be primarily defending is guards. And most of the collegiate guards are getting past him pretty easily. So that's sort of the disqualifier for me. And off the ball, he's not much of a factor. So yeah, that's where I have Lanier. I think he's maybe he's worth a 2A to me at some level, but he's just an easier rule than a lot of those guys in that sort of tier to fit into an NBA rotation for me if he were to ever crack one.
Yeah, he stinks. I think that's kind of the end. Bryce, you want to wrap us?
Yeah, I probably should, huh? That's probably my job now that I think about it. My bad. Yeah, no, this was great. I apologize to Chaz Lanier. I hope you prove us all wrong and have a 15-year NBA career, though. If that were the case, you'd be 38 by the time it's done. So that would probably hurt your knees pretty bad. But anyways, this has been great. This has been the Upside Swings NBA Draft podcast. We hope we get our ceiling. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. We're putting out basically daily content at this point, and we probably will up until the draft, including probably in the couple days after the draft. Talking about, I'm guessing if I were to yonder a guess, we'll end up doing a draft grades video. We'll end up doing teams that won the draft or whatever, players that are going to be helped by their circumstances. Well, we can get all gadgety and like Tennessee with Chaz Lanier. We can get all gadgety. That's a strike. My fault, Chaz. That is a crazy name, though. I never would have thought that was. Yeah. But anyways, yeah. Like, subscribe, hit the bell, get those notifications, and if you're listening to this as a podcast, we hope you guys enjoyed it, and let us know what you think. Let us know, as we're kind of getting into deeper dive guys. If there's anyone in specific, especially auto-eligible guys, because it's hard to track down a complete list. If there's anyone that you specifically want to hear our thoughts on, let us know, and we will do our best to get there before the draft. It's coming up sooner than you think. We're about 3 weeks away right now. I think it's the 24th, so a little less than 3 weeks. When you guys listen to this, it'll probably be way less than 3 weeks, but we're getting there. For Stone Out Report _Coop, at Ali_Oop_Coop, I'm at Bryce Cedric 14. This has been the Upside Swings NBA Draft podcast. We hope we hit our ceiling. Thank you.
Was actually sorry. I know we just started recording, but I was listening to the end of that. I was listening at the beginning bit where we were just giggling during because I edited the Kalkbrenner pod today, and I was just actually in tears, like just sitting here trying to edit. I was just crying, laughing. It was awful.
Yeah.
This is going in the back of the pod too now.
No, this one's not. This one's not.
That's what it's like dealing with you guys. Just awful.
So it's awesome. It's awesome.
Okay. All right. I'm surprised no one's made any jokes about the mustache, by the way, but that's all right. Well, I'm sure you guys are brainstorming as we speak. No, right,
I'm going to use that as a transition during the episode.
Oh, very good. Very good. Gotcha.